And a very good morning to you. We're live in London and you're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Coming up today, my guests share their views on the week's biggest stories. Philippe Marlière and Simon Brooke are sitting beside me here in Studio One. Simon, good morning. What have you spotted?
Good morning. Well, obviously a lot of coverage of the truce in Ukraine, questions about whether it will hold, and also riots against Donald Trump in the US. But will they make any difference? And then finally, a little story I like about matcha.
Excellent. And we'll hear from Fiona Wilson in Tokyo.
I'm Fiona Wilson, Monocle's senior Asia editor. I'll be talking about Osaka Expo and Tokyo's plan to turn an elevated expressway into a public park.
And our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, joins us on the line from Lisbon plus Parakeet. It's the 20th of April, 2025. Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday with Emma Nelson.
And a very good morning to you all. Happy Easter. Simon and Philippe, how have your weeks been? Welcome.
Thank you for having us. So my week has been quite busy, a little bit of work, but then actually a lot of gardening, funnily enough. In the last few weeks, months, years, I've really got into gardening.
I was going to say, you haven't gone full conker, but you have got a lovely touch of the sun on the forehead.
Thank you. Yeah.
You look, and how is the garden?
The garden is just... Spring is springing. I think it's so... I'm just, as I say, really into gardening now because there's so much trouble in the world. There's, as a news addict, I find looking at the news and checking my phone every 5 minutes so depressing. So the idea of getting into the garden, getting my hands dirty, planting things, watching some things die, but other things grow. It's just the best. I can't recommend it enough.
So I've known you for a very, very long time, Simon. I've known you for a decade. And when I first met you, little did I ever believe that the hard-bitten journalist that I was sitting in front of me at that point would turn into the gardening-loving... your partner has retired. Now you have dogs. It's like we can see the brakes being put on here.
Exactly.
Horrifying.
And the thing about gardening is it is addictive. You think you'll dip your toe in, have a little go, and then before you know it, you're a complete gardening junkie.
Yeah, we have a balcony, and now you can't move across the balcony for plants. Philippe, how about you? How's your week been? Have you been taking a more bucolic approach?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Emma. Well, it's been also a very busy week and busy Easter weekend as well. But when I want to escape and relax, I sort of head to the Hampstead Heath, which is not far from where I live, and which is best London park for a walk or a jog. Apart from that, I saw a very nice film called The Return in the cinema this week, as well as a play, Rhinoceros, by the playwright UNESCO. So it was a busy week.
Cultural and relaxing.
Cultural, yes.
And wonderful. Let us head to a hive of activity on a Portuguese balcony where our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, is standing by, complete with, I'm hoping you've been to the garden centre, Tyler, but I'm told that there are parakeets. A very happy Easter to you. How are things?
Good morning. Happy Easter, Emma. Indeed, yes. There was I guess since I spoke to you last week, there was a visit to a lovely garden centre out in Oeiras, so just a little bit west of Lisbon. And this was the most remarkable garden centre experience really I've ever managed to partake in. It involved multiple helpers who are on scene to basically reconstruct the entire balcony, so you could get a sense of volume. There was people on hand to move planters. Did you want real banana trees, faux banana trees? Who even knew that there was a faux banana tree? I didn't know that. And then a whole discussion about what did you want to, of course, block in terms of the view. So it was amazing over the course of 2 hours with planters in place, with all kinds of vegetation. We were able to sort of say this is what we would do with the balcony, and then 18 hours later, a whole crew descended, and we had instant pop-up jungle in the middle of Lisbon, and it's been amazing. Some of the plans will go back to the centre. Not that they're not working; they're just maybe the volume is wrong, or they're too flappy or something. My mom has been sort of saying, "How would you feel if you had that poor plant that you sort of made your way all the way from there, all the way up to the 6th floor, and now you have to get returned?" But one or two will have to go.
Indeed, especially if you're a bit flappy. That's not a reason for ejection in any way. That could be quite hurtful.
Well, some can be flappy. I mean, if you're a banana tree, you're allowed to be flappy. I'm not sure what this one is behind me though.
Are we?
Go ahead.
Without going to sort of, botanical and exact names, what did we end up with on the balcony?
Well, we ended up, of course, why do a balcony in a climate like Lisbon if you can't go semi-tropical or even full tropical? So this is not a land of lavenders and things that one would find in the middle of Europe or on a balcony in London. So there's just a lot of crazy things that you would find probably in Brazil that would look good, maybe a little bit more, Tangier, sort of, the top end of Africa, and it's looking good. I will send you photographic evidence. It needs to go into itself, but it's remarkable. I mean, just as Simon was saying at the start of this, even 1 week in, and your hands are dirty, and everything starts to go a little bit wild, and it's going to be very exciting. So, on my return from Jakarta, because of course we've got our Chiefs conference this week in Southeast Asia, we'll be coming back, and I'm intrigued to see what this will look like.
And there will be additional emails, no doubt, because once you realise that you are in control or you are responsible for this, there is the watering and the looking after and the pruning and the repositioning, and it suddenly becomes an extra child that requires tending to, doesn't it?
It does, and I'm sort of embarrassed to say that there is a watering, there's an irrigation system in place. It involves the dreaded A word. There's even an app to turn it on and off. But anyway, I am not responsible for that. But I think everything will be. Yeah, I think everything is going to be sort of reasonably well looked after, and Jose and his team did a remarkable job. Mom will be on hand to, of course, make sure that it sort of eases in properly, of course, over the coming days.
We look forward to it. Well, I'm just going to get my geraniums because I want to pretend I'm in Switzerland. Tyler, you also have parakeets as well. I mean, we've now gone. We've the Urbanist needs a whole episode dedicated to what's going on in your 6 metre square balcony. I'm sure it's bigger, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's 36 square meters.
What?
Yeah. It's a proper landing pad. It is. But no, I'm just watching one of the parakeets across the street. He's up on a television. It's interesting when you look at Lisbon rooftops. There are so many TV aerials still, and I just find that fascinating. There's satellite dishes. There's little snapshot of where I'm looking right now. Lots of satellite dishes, of course, pointing towards the equator. The name Conterra on them. I'm not sure who Conterra is as a company, but you feel like there could be sort of the North Africa station for the CIA could be one of these buildings across the street. And if I sort of really isolated the shot, you feel like this could be sort of a rooftop, even though of course we're not Med. It just reminds you of maybe being. I mean, it feels very much to me our little stretch of street. Bit of it feels like that you could be in Rio, but part of it also feels like Beirut as well. But you see all of these TV aerials and odd satellite dishes. Okay,
and the parakeets are busy.
And the parakeets are busy this morning, but they were going crazy at about 8:58 as we were counting down. Now they're around, but they were rather noisy. We've counted about 4 or 5 of them. They're getting closer. This is the thing. They are last week they were on the far side of the street, and now they're. Well, you maybe can hear one going by right now. They're sort of every day 1 or 2 meters closer. So we're going to see if they will indeed be on the balcony railing. Yeah. Maybe this time next week.
So I hope they don't go full Hitchcock. What else? So tell us about your plans for this week. You've mentioned that it's a trip to Jakarta.
Yes, indeed. So I believe some colleagues are already in position in Indonesia. We have our Chiefs conference. Edition 4, so we've been to Samaritz, and we have been to Dallas. We've been to Hong Kong last year. And this is our entrepreneurship and leadership conference. And we'll have a variety of voices from Japan, from Thailand, from the Philippines, from Indonesia, and elsewhere, delegates coming from all over the world. And it's going to be a lovely Wednesday evening cocktail, full conference on Thursday. And then a bit of probably a wrap up and wind up on Friday morning. So, and that's one of the curious things I was thinking once upon a time, if you were in a city like Lisbon, and you had to get to Asia, it probably would have involved, well, once upon a time, TAP Airways used to fly all the way to Macau. You could have made your way to Indonesia that way, potentially, but it probably would have been in sort of a 2 or 3 stop journey. I was even looking if you wanted to fly on a KLM, for example, if you wanted to fly on a European carrier. And it's interesting when you think about just the power, the growth of an economy like Indonesia. Of course, you think that all kinds of European carriers would want to be servicing that route.
And
no, KLM, the only airline that will take you there, and so you'd have to go Lisbon to Amsterdam with a stop in KL, and then KL eventually gets you down to Jakarta. So, in the modern world of aviation, all roads lead through Doha, Abu Dhabi, or Dubai.
Indeed. I mean, that's the only way that I would ever sort of envisage going to Indonesia. What awaits us in the Chiefs this week? Which bit are you the most excited about?
Listen, I think, part of it is going to be just the Indonesian discussion, hearing from, entrepreneurs from Jakarta. And this is from a variety of sectors, from design to retail to media, and then also people coming, I would say sharing similar backgrounds also from other regions as well. And talking about everything from how do you, of course, sell part of your business to a major global cosmetics company. So there we're talking to a Thai entrepreneur who's the founder of the brand Panpuri, which once upon a time, even 3 or 4 years ago, you would have seen it in Thai department stores and Thai malls, but now has major Japanese backing. So there we're going to be just fascinated listening to how do you take a family-grown business and suddenly you have a lot of cash in the bank. What do you do with it? So I think stories of transformation, as much as how do you manage the modern workplace? And this means a new generation of colleagues around you. How do you manage, integrate, buy out family members? So we want to get into the grit of course, growing business, but also talking about the other aspects of the challenges that we have with personnel from time to time in companies. When to be very good, go deep in your own market and maybe dominate, or at what point do you say, look, we want to spread our wings and be a regional player as much as a global player. So those will be a couple of the themes that we'll be looking to unpack.
There's also something that you wanted to pick up on this morning, which is the idea of you mentioned there the idea of, do you go deep locally, or do you also start to look at the region as well, and the idea of the way that people move around and the what bits of bureaucracy or what green lights need to be pressed in order to enable people to travel.
Well, indeed. Well, this is or not travel. That was a bit of the theme in my column this week, which is we're in of course moving into peak travel season in the Northern Hemisphere. Certainly in Europe, you can already feel just the crush of tourists yesterday here in Lisbon. The harbor, cruise ships up and down the river, disgorging thousands of people, and just that sense of maybe some people, before you get your passport, you also maybe have to do a small sort of general knowledge test on how to behave in the world. I think that this is good for nations. I think when they're sending their citizens abroad, I think, of course, it's very good for people on the other end who have to host them as well. So I'm trying to find who could be that coalition of the willing, the first set of countries that say, look, before you get your passport, you also have to do a test as well. How can you be a good global citizen when you're out on the road?
And indeed, also one of those sort of, I would think you'd want to include a basic general knowledge test as well, because we were in Italy a couple of weeks ago, and we were near the Trevi Fountain, and you cannot now get anywhere near the Trevi Fountain. You can't get near anything anywhere in Rome nowadays, and you actually wondered whether people knew what they were there for.
Well, that's it, because there's just that. You see, and I was actually thinking about this yesterday, there is that sort of travel herd mentality that people start to speak in a certain way and they start to make, I don't know, sort of the same absurd observations. I was just eavesdropping on a couple of just groups, a group of 7 French people, a group of, 12 Australians, all wandering around, and you get into that sort of travel pack group speak. And yes, and I think there is maybe you have a leader of the pack, and I think there's many things that just completely wash over people, and and they're part of that. What has become, I can't even call it a new grand tour, but as you said, they go by the Trevi Fountain, and they might think it's just an extended branch of sort of extra delight that comes with Starbucks not far away.
Talking of travel, and when you do actually get your pass to get to where you want to be, and you have passed your tests, I've never quite mastered the art of packing. I think I will spend the rest of my life failing at packing. Tyler, you are clearly someone who has plenty of extremely good ideas to share about what you need to find your style.
Well, I think there's two things. Yes, you have to find your style first. And I could say, I think you found your style. Like you've got that bit. I think Emma Nelson, you have your look, and it's a very good look. So I think you've got that bit mastered. Now, I have to say, this is interesting. I've known you for quite a while now. I've never seen you pull up anywhere. So with sort of whether it's with two suitcases or a jaunty tote bag on your shoulder, thinking, wow, she really knows how to pack. So that bit, I can't sort of stand up for you. Maybe indeed you don't know how to pack, but you do know how to dress. And I think that is also sort of part of the art of packing. If you've sort of found your style and you know what your daily groove is, then it should be quite easy, because when you have a bit of confidence, you've got your look down, then you don't have to go crazy and then empty the entire wardrobe, because there's things that you want to fall back on again and again. Throw those in the bag, off you go. You don't need 5 pairs of trousers for a 7-day trip. Normally, 1 or 2 pairs of trousers will do. And I always have to caveat this: you need a hotel with outstanding laundry, though.
And you don't need heels, Tyler. And that's the thing that bulks up.
Yeah. Well, no, I think new trainers bulk up, because look what a running shoe used to look like 7 or 8 years ago. It was reasonably lean. Now everything looks like a hovercraft from the 1970s. It's like you could cross the channel. Those are sort of like the volume eaters when you only have let's say a 30-liter bag. So I think actually heels. I mean, of course, if you've got like sort of a massive wedge clog, which I've not seen you in, Emma.
No.
That nor shall we. That could be an issue, but I would say that a new Asics, a new Balance, a new Nike, way bigger than any crazy clogs you could be putting in your suitcase.
I won't tell you what I'm wearing on my feet at this precise moment.
I can't hear them.
No, you can't, but they're comfortable. What age did you find your style? When did you realise that this was how you were going to be?
I definitely, you have to be past 30. I don't think you really found your style until this bad news for our young listeners. I think you're probably, I don't know, because I was thinking, there is a moment you think, I've got it all figured out, etc. And then I was thinking, looking back at you remember that moment when Prada and Prada menswear launched it was like sort of the mid-90s. It was like really the thing. And it was very, it was all very trim, and it was all very navy blue. But I think back, and it's just like that was just a walking fire hazard, because it was very crisp, very nice. My goodness, was it all flammable? And so there was something vaguely Gattaca, very vaguely uniform about it, but it wasn't sort of where one settles, and sort of really where one finds their personal style. I think you're sort of mid-30s by the time you figured it out.
Tyler, thank you so much for bringing us advice on how to decorate your balcony and how to dress. That was our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, in Lisbon. And a very happy Easter to him too. What age did you find your style, Simon Brooke and Philippe Marlière?
Philippe, what do you think?
I'm still searching for it. I think, it changes. I think it's true that, as Tyler put it, that you probably need to be a little bit to reach your 30s to really know exactly what your style is. But I think it keeps changing. But I think my style is probably things and clothes I'm comfortable with and in, and I think it's very much what I would describe as my style.
A slight remark, though, a sweet remark when you walked in this morning. I think it's probably clear from your accent that you're French. And you came in with, you are wearing the best pair of round glasses that only a French person could carry off. And also you tie your scarf in a way that I think, do they send you for classes when you are French?
Yes,
you have to have
absolutely. You learn that in school.
It's navy and it has white polka dots on it. If I wore that, it wouldn't work. Simon, would that be in the Brooke?
I would try and carry it off, but not being French, I'd probably fail miserably. But looped through scarf is, I mean, it was quite controversial a few years ago because people thought, is that the way to wear a scarf? But I think I love it. I think it's great. But I think the thing about your personal style is I think when you're in your 20s, you just wear whatever your friends are wearing, don't you? Whether it suits you or not. You're just so desperate to fit in. You just wear whatever's advertised to you. And then when you get into your 30s, I think, perhaps as Tyler was saying, that's, I think, when you begin to think, actually, that suits me, that doesn't. This is what I feel comfortable in. This is my own style. And then perhaps in your 40s and your 50s, you think, oh, I can't be bothered with this fashion malarkey. It's too much for me. And then from my experience, you get into your late 50s, 60s, and you think, actually, I think I'm going to have to work a bit harder again. I remember being at Gatwick Airport here in the UK a few summers ago and just watching men, many of whom were younger than me, walking around and just thinking, what a bunch of slobs. I'm sorry, call me a snob, but they were just wearing sort of tracksuits, hadn't shaved, hadn't combed their hair. They looked absolutely dreadful. And I thought, right, that's it. You know, when you get to a certain age, you've got to be a little bit more stylish and, you know, compensate for your age, perhaps.
It's interesting that everyone will know I have a 13-year-old boy and he has gone full teen tracksuit, and it's trainer wars and it's massive baggy tracksuits and it's dreadful haircuts, and it's sort of heartbreaking to watch someone just go through that phase. But at the same time, I asked a friend of ours who is an incredibly good dresser, and I said, what do I do? How do I bring him back from the brink? And he said exactly what you have said, Simon. Firstly, they want to be part of something, and so that's fine.
And that something is not you, by the way. Sorry, he'll be delighted that you're so appalled by his dress sense.
And I'm absolutely appalled. He's appalled by my dress sense. I'm appalled by his. It's wonderful. It's totally healthy. But the nice thing is that the friend then went on to say, don't worry about it. You have a son who's interested in how he looks. And he said, what's worse? Someone who pays absolutely zero attention to their appearance. At least this kid is interested in clothes. And it's quite a nice thing. And when you have that conversation about being interested in clothes, suddenly people get very excited nowadays. I mean, do you get super interested in clothes, Philippe? Do you follow it at all?
Sometimes, yes. I have to say the context, social political context, impact also on your style. Think of the COVID period and all the lockdowns. I think that was very bad for your style because we were locked in at home and probably a little bit sloppy when it comes to, what should I wear? I stayed a very long time without wearing and ironing a shirt, for instance, which is very bad for your style.
I'm just lazy.
But thinking in terms of teenage style and the sort of uniform they all wear, I think you escaped probably, I was a teenager in the late 1970s, and that was, the peak, the height of punk rock. So imagine you escaped that. So of course, and I'm telling you here, of course, I followed that fashion of being punk rock for a while.
Did you?
So, yes, my parents were very shocked because I was in France in a small town and there was no such thing as punk rock, or no one has ever heard of that. So it was a very English import. And so, of course, it took me a while. And going to high school with my hair and my clothes, that was very hard.
So we've already established that, as, dare I say, conforming to some rather wonderful French stereotypes in terms of style, excellent quality, perfectly round glasses. There's there's an intellectual air about him, ladies and gentlemen, and the perfectly looped sort of lovely silk scarf. So that's sort of one picture that we're quite used to. And if you're listening, this is obviously going to be fun because you can't see this. So, Philippe, you're going to have to tell us what you look like as a punk.
Oh, I was a great fan of the very well-known band, the Sex Pistols. So I was kind of trying to imitate the lead singer, Johnny Rotten, John Lydon now. So that was the kind of, so if you have a picture of John Lydon back those days of punk rock, I think with spiky hair, the kind of crazy torn jeans. And I was a bit like that, and but again, no one in my school, and wearing a hearing. I also have a pièce ear, and I was probably the first one ever in my school to have that. And I remember teachers. That was really very disapproving air of the teachers when I came to school with that one day.
Excellent. Do you still wear it?
No. That's over.
That's a shame.
I'm a sort of a very serious academic, so I'm not wearing it anyway.
There's space and time for you yet, Philippe.
Yes.
How about you, Simon? Was there a punk phase for you?
I'm still impressed with the earring. I have to
think
say,
it's
I never went that far, Philippe. I'm really impressed.
Neither did I.
No, I didn't do the punk thing. What I did, which is far worse, I think, actually, is the George Michael 80s, big hair, flamboyant shirts, and the sort of the Caribbean look on the dole sort of thing. So I do remember growing up in the 80s in the north of England when there were no jobs, really depressed area, whatever. But what you could do is save up your pocket money and buy some really flamboyant clothes from the little boutique. And then what you could do is go and sign on for your benefit or whatever. So I do remember going on holiday, coming back with a really wicked dark tan with my blonde hair and, as I say, the sort of the Hawaiian shirt and stuff, coming into the dole office, as it then was, to sign up to get my money free from the government or whatever, and just saying to the woman, I've been on holiday. And she looked me up and down and went, yeah, I see. So that was the 80s dream. There were no jobs, but you could still have the really great, fun, flamboyant lifestyle.
That's amazing when you can actually step up way beyond your means and actually live
good,
your fantasies. It is a shame that these looks have now gone. Where did it all get?
Are there fewer tribes these days? I mean, you were talking about punk, Philippe, and I can think of that kind of soul boy look I had, embarrassingly.
Yeah.
But are the tribes gone now? I don't know.
I think so, mostly. I think if you look around in London, Camden, it would be a place where you would find that's very. And I think. Go probably, because they're still touring those old bands. If you are still interested, so if you go to one of those concerts, you will end up with all punks, guys in their 50s, 60s plus, which is bizarre. Yeah.
This is incredible. Actually, the tribes do still exist. My son is part of a sort of a rap tribe. They all wear exactly the same clothes, and that's how they identify with each other.
And
they find it comforting.
Goths around these days. I think the goth thing has continued, doesn't it?
Yep.
So
Tribes exist. Yeah. It's fine. It's all good. Let's have a quick look at the newspapers. We're going to head to Tokyo in a few minutes' time. Our Tokyo bureau chief Fiona Wilson is standing by to bring us everything where she is. But first, I think we need to have a quick look at the way that this ceasefire that Vladimir Putin has declared yesterday, completely out of the blue, and yet 2 hours after it was declared, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, was on absolutely everything, saying they're still bombing us. We've told people to stop. They're still bombing us. What have we spotted in the papers today on it?
Well, it seems that the so-called Easter ceasefire, which was pronounced by Putin, was a bit of a sham. It never existed, and I think the bombing apparently seems to be going on. Drones are still used to sort of hit some residential areas and killing people. So that is, and that's not the first time. I think since 2014, which is the date of the invasion of Crimea, I think that there was numerous ceasefires which were never respected by Russia and Putin. It's interesting because in a sense, it confirms what critiques of Trump and his policy as a sort of honest or not so honest peace broker was a bit of a joke, because Putin doesn't seem really interested in making peace right now.
Simon, your reaction to the way that this has been playing out for the last 24 hours?
Well,
I think surprise, I think.
No great surprise, absolutely. We know that, to me, I think Putin is just laughing. I think this is a joke for him. We know that in 20 years that he will say things that he knows are blatantly not true, but he manages to do it to the West anyway with a straight face. Interesting, the New York Times is pointing out that this ceasefire offer is designed to do two things. It appeals to President Trump, and it also puts President Zelensky into a bind. Zelensky could either reject the truce offer, and risk angering Trump, or he could take it and risk letting Russia take advantage of a planned secession in hostilities to gather its forces for a new push. Well, that's obviously what's happening at the moment. And I think if you put this into the context of what we've seen this week, where essentially the Trump administration has made it pretty clear they've had enough. They more or less said this is too difficult. Who knew that developing a ceasefire and creating peace would involve so many meetings, for goodness sake? I think the other thing that's really coming across is Steve Witkoff, who is, of course, President Trump's envoy for the Middle East, but now apparently trying to broker a deal here. Just a man who's completely out of his depth. I mean, he's quoted as saying, "I don't regard Putin as a bad guy." Really? I liked him. I thought he was straight up with me. I mean, and this is a guy who's admitted that Hamas, for instance, duped him. He's, as I say, completely out of his depth. And I think we can see how this is just such good news for Putin and Russia.
There is this strange paradox, isn't there, Philippe, that you have when you have the likes of Witkoff and Rubio, and Rubio obviously has extensive political experience, but when Trump brought in his pals to run the United States, you sometimes in the back of your heart hoped that this crazy break from tradition and from the usual tropes would actually might crack something somewhere, that if you thought, okay, let's go in with a deal maker. But clearly this is something that I think we're seeing faltering really quickly, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I agree with you, Simon, when you say those guys are out of their depth. Clearly, Trump is also out of his depth. But somehow, having said that, it's probably part also of a kind of strategy, to be so obviously blatantly out of your depth, because we know very well that it's all part of the transactional strategy of Trump, a kind of when he was running his state empire, we make a deal. And I think that's the kind of mentality he's got with regard to Putin. He doesn't care whether Putin is a good or bad man in the end. It's a deal. Let's make a deal. What can I get from this involvement in Ukraine? Or if I pull out, is it better for the US? That's a kind of mentality, and all the guys around him share that. Of course, they pay lip service to Trump. That's why, but that's not the way you conduct international affairs. That's so amateurish. That's so wrong, and of course it can only backfire. So things were supposed to be, let's remember, were supposed to be dealt with and sorted within a week or days. And I think now it's talking about pulling out.
And this idea of abandoning Ukraine, this idea of the Trump administration saying we don't want to be part of this anymore, it adds these bigger questions, doesn't this, about whether not wanting to be part of the negotiations means that they stop all help to Ukraine, or do they stop threatening to impose further sanctions on Russia? We don't know who's going to win from this, do we? We suspect Ukraine may not come out of this well.
Oh, almost certainly. The Putin, there you go, Trump, Putin, interchangeable. The Trump administration will give in to Vladimir Putin. We know that. And just to pick up on this point about Donald Trump and doing deals, his biography was called The Art of the Deal, but if you've ever read it, there aren't many deals in it at all. It's basically just Donald Trump saying what a wonderful guy he is. If
you've read it?
Yeah,
wow.
Because it's hilarious, but it's got nothing to do with doing deals. And if you look at Donald Trump's record on business deals, it's pretty rubbish. Almost every project that he invests in, that he initiates, fails.
Many bankruptcies, yes.
Repeatedly. The one real success he's had, of course, is Trump Tower. But if you can't build a tower in the middle of Manhattan and make money, then that's an amazing achievement. So he's just not really very good at making deals. And I think you can see already the way he tries to rush things. He either fights people and creates animosity, which means nobody wants to cooperate, as you say, Philippe, or he gives too much away. I mean, immediately giving things to Putin, and we saw in his first term the delicate negotiations in the Middle East, the way he immediately made concessions to Israel without asking anything in return. So Donald Trump is not very good at deals. What he is good at is the attention economy. He's very good at creating news, making things that announcements that will grab the headlines, and also work within his timelines, which are basically 1 hour episode of The Apprentice or a 3-minute TikTok video. That's all he's thinking about. So the idea that there might be any strategy, let alone a transactional deal behind Donald Trump's approach to Russia, I think is just nonsense.
You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson, joined in the studio by Philippe, Marlière and Simon Brooke. Let's head now to Tokyo, where it's just approaching 25 to 6 in the evening, nearly time to start wondering what we're going to have for dinner. But first, let's find out how Fiona Wilson is, our Tokyo bureau chief and senior Asia editor. Good evening, or good afternoon, Fiona. How are things?
Yeah, fine. It's been such a nice run of weather here. I'm sitting here in a T-shirt. So, we've had a sort of roller coaster time of weather. I did my own little Easter celebration today at lunch. It's not a festival that anyone is paying attention to in Japan, but I found a leg of lamb and slung that in the oven.
What did you do with
it? Tried not to, make it any worse. But no, it was fine. Cooking's not my forte, but still. It's the effort that counts.
Congratulations on celebrating Easter. I have a leg of lamb in the fridge as well that's going to require some attention later. Right, so you've been to Expo. So the big holidays, pictures coming out of Japan this week have been from Osaka, which has this enormous expo, the greatest show on earth. It's been about, 5 decades since Osaka last had a go at it. And they had, millions of people went. 64 million people went there. They're not quite expecting the similar numbers this year, are they?
They're not expecting that many. No, 1970 Osaka Expo, it's a sort of legendary expo, certainly legendary in Japan, where a lot of older people remember it. It was an amazing period for design. Many really, really good designers, architects were involved in that expo. And in this one, actually, you've got a lot of famous Japanese architects who are involved. I think I saw a newspaper headline that described the start of the expo as turbulent. So I don't know what we read into that. But yeah, I mean, you immediately huge queues at the entrance. They might have anticipated that a lot of people would be trying to go through the gates. I think there's been a bit of a kerfuffle about it's very digitized, this one. So you need to make reservations to go to pavilions. You need to wave QR codes all over the place. And some of the senior crowd not so thrilled with that. But I think, they've got quite an ambitious target for numbers. They want, mid 20 million to come. They're already saying maybe we won't get that, but we might not be far off it. It's been a bit of a rocky start, but we'll see.
So bring us up to date with some of the more positive things. And obviously, an expo of this scale needs to find its feet. And obviously, it's on its way to doing that. We're not quite there yet. But the purpose of the expo this year, it has quite a sort of a woolly remit, isn't it? It's like finding a better future for us all, and it hasn't quite sort of nailed down its intention.
I mean, I think that is basically the idea of every expo. To be honest, they just kind of move the words around into a different order. But yeah, it's something about future society. And there are all sorts of slogans like that dotted around. There are pavilions from loads of countries. Big Japanese companies have pavilions. Some countries have kind of bunched up together. The Nordics have got a pavilion next to a very multicoloured Turkmenistan pavilion, which is enormous. Obviously the US pavilion is absolutely mammoth, and the queues for that, I heard, have been huge. I rather like the French pavilion, can't lie. They've done an awful lot with fashion in that one. They've got Celine working with Japanese lacquer craftsmen to make these beautiful artworks. They've got Christian Dior clothes. I mean, they pretty much throw in the kitchen sink at this one. Very varied, and it's huge. This event is massive, and it's all encircled in this enormous thing called the Grand Ring, which is designed by a very good Japanese architect called So Fujimoto, and it's a big wooden elevated ring, basically, and you can walk around the top of this thing, and I actually like that almost more than any of the pavilions. So, it's a mixed bag, I would say, but take your walking shoes and sunscreen. Very hot in Osaka in the summer, so it could be a hot one. But I think there'll be things that people like, but I do think they're going to have a problem with these queues and getting people into the pavilions to see the things that they're trying to show.
Yeah, don't anyone put off. Talking about walking and taking your sunscreen, let's move neatly to the fact that Tokyo is to get its own High Line.
Yeah, so I went on Friday to what I thought was going to be a very low-key event. And it's basically a chunk of expressway that runs right through the middle of a very smart bit of Tokyo, runs through Ginza, 2 kilometres, elevated expressway. They've just closed it, this stretch, and it's going to be turned into a pedestrian park. It looks absolutely wonderful. The plans look amazing. It's going to take 10 years to complete. The governor of Tokyo was there. They had primary school kids. And then, unexpectedly, they had a whole parade of these amazing Japanese cars from the 60s, 70s, 80s. I'm no car person. I loved it, particularly when I saw the car from You Only Live Twice rolling by, Toyota GT2000, if you're interested. And it was really good fun, actually. And I thought it was a great way to start the whole thing off. And basically, they're trying to move these expressways underground. There's going to be a big circular road going under Tokyo. So I thought it was a very, very positive kind of example of turning what is a pretty ugly bit of infrastructure into something really, great for the public.
And this idea of trying to sort of make Tokyo less traffic dependent. I mean, how this is clearly an ambition that needs to be addressed with some seriousness. How successful do you think it will be?
Well, it's interesting with Tokyo and cars. I mean, I've lived here for a long time. I've never had a car, and most people I know don't have a car. So it's a curious situation where, you do have these very fast expressways. If I ever rent a car and go on one of these expressways, it's frankly a bit terrifying because they go pretty fast. So I think the idea is that really Tokyo should be a city where people are using public transport where they can. And there's an amazing network of public transport. So it makes sense. Yeah, there's a certain element of, beautification of the city. Do you want these elevated expressways carving through the city? I don't particularly mind them, but this one has got a really, really striking location. And I think it will be better as a park than an expressway.
Let's move on to a story that you mentioned already that it's going to be pretty hot in Osaka. Take your sunscreen. The Japanese have now got a special heat stroke alert system that's coming into play, which is something which is sort of laughably ridiculous if you're sitting in a slightly chilly studio in the middle of London.
I know, so yeah, sympathies there. But no, I think last year it was just record-breakingly hot, and it's a serious issue here how hot it gets. Traditional Japanese houses, small Japanese houses don't have air conditioning. And even in Tokyo, a few hundred people died last summer. It was the hottest summer ever. And they already have they've got various levels of alerts. They already have what they call an ordinary alert. And that was, set off, it was something like 1,700 times last summer, which is, again, a record breaker. And what they've done this year is say, if it reaches, it's all sorts of measures, humidity, temperature, sunlight, it reaches a certain very high level, then they know that's going to happen the day before, they will put out this alert, which is basically the public can come into they've identified places, they can go into places where there's air conditioning, sports events would be cancelled, because that's a big consideration, all these poor school kids being broiled in the sun at sports days. And my own son, his school has actually moved its sports day now. It was sort of at the end of the summer. That now happens in April. So I don't know, global warming in action.
Finally, our guest Simon Brooke wanted to talk to us about matcha tea and the fact that Japan is struggling to produce the finest. Fiona, could you fill us in on this one before we get sort of Simon's view? I think you might know the man who wrote it.
Yes, vaguely familiar. Might share a house with him. Can't lie. This is a big topic in Japan. Do not worry. This is not just a sort of newspaper story to excite British readers of the Times. But that there is a matcha shortage. I mean, the matcha latte is just sort of taking over the world, and also people want to buy this very, very good quality powdered matcha. And matcha it's green tea, but they do it's a special way they harvest it, if you're very interested. They shade the leaves a bit before it's harvested, and then they grind it down in a certain way. It's pretty analog the way it's done. Most people are using machines at this point to do the grinding, but it's still very labour intensive, and they just can't produce enough. And at the moment, demand has skyrocketed, and certain areas of Japan, famous. Even, in Japan, people will want tea from places like Uji. This is one of the places near Kyoto. And there's high demand in Japan. And now if you go to some of my sort of regular shops where I would normally buy green tea, they're not allowing you to buy, or they're saying you can only buy one packet at a time. They don't want people reselling it. So it's a real thing. Yeah, there is definitely a shortage.
And this article is lovely because it sort of compares the growth of green tea to actually a particular wine that you have to think about the soil and terroir. But as ancient and as traditional as the production methods may be, everybody clearly is going bananas for it. And there is a worry that actually this bubble will now burst.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The matcha latte is not something that's been particularly popular in Japan. They've never been big in dairy products generally. They're now drinking latte like the rest of the world. But the matcha latte is I would say is probably something more that foreigners who come to Japan, I notice they're ordering it. And some of my favourite coffee shops are now they're serving matcha latte, but they're being careful to buy it from places that they like. If people in Japan they ask where it comes from, they will want to know. And if you're a tea grower in Uji, you will be looking down on matcha made in some other places. Uji is sort of top of the pile, and your average matcha latte, I feel that Uji tea might be just a bit too good for that.
Simon, are you a big drinker of matcha lattes? You don't strike me as someone who might be.
No, I'm fascinated by what you've been saying, Fiona. I have to say, I'm not a fan at all, really. I only had it once just because I thought I'd better try it, and it didn't really taste of much at all, I thought. But now you're talking about it, Fiona. I have to say, but I need to do it properly, don't I? I think in the piece here, there's a description of somebody ordering a matcha latte, which is matcha, oat milk, lavender syrup, and ice would be the equivalent of mixing a fine single malt with iron brew. So I think, if I'm going to get the full matcha experience, I really need to I need to do it properly, don't I?
Fiona, how should we be doing it?
Well, what I would say is, number one, come to Japan, because who knows where the matcha is coming from anywhere else.
I'm coming in October, actually, anyway, so I'll do it, yeah.
Okay, I will give you the secret address. I know where, if you really want to try a good matcha latte, it's in my little black book that I don't give out to everyone, but I will tell you.
Incredibly grateful, thank you.
So we'll never find out how we make matcha latte because it's all in Fiona's book. Fiona Wilson in Tokyo, thank you so much for joining us on the line. Let's move on to some of the stories that have been covering in the last few weeks. You mentioned a few minutes ago, Philippe, that you'd seen the Ionesco play Rhinoceros, which, if you've ever been to university and studied French, you all have to do it. It's a story of a small town where people slowly turn into rhinoceroses, and it's an allegory, isn't it, to sort of act as a warning. It's a 1950s play written as a warning against Nazism, effectively,
yes,
totalitarianism.
Absolutely, and it's on at the Almeida Theatre, so if you're in London and if you get a chance, get a ticket, just go and watch it, see it, because it's a brilliant adaptation. Yeah, it's a kind of tragicomic parable of the irresistible rise of fascism, if you like, in Europe before the Second World War. And it's been back in fashion, that play, at the moment, I think for wrong reasons, because exactly there's, again, fortunately, the rise of authoritarian forces, parties and governments now. And so, yes, the rhinos arrive one day in a small town in France. We don't know where exactly, doesn't matter. And first, people are in denial, which is also something a kind of reaction when we were faced with that situation. No, it can't be fascism. It can't happen again. And when they come to terms with that, there is another thing, which is, how would they react to it? And there's a disease spreading, rhinoceritis. We don't know exactly how you catch it, but you catch it from the rhinos themselves. And once you catch it, you transform yourself into rhino. So that's, again, a parable to say, if you don't mount a challenge, if you don't stand up to authoritarian regimes, in the end, they will get strengthened, and proper fascism will set in.
This ties in neatly with something that you spotted in the Times, isn't it, Simon? A writer has talked about, I think it's Tim Bouverie, who studies the rise of Nazism and has written an article in today's Sunday Times saying that there are things that are happening now or in the last few weeks which have alarmed him. It says the historian and author of Allies at War says that America is in the danger of forgetting lessons from the alliance that won the Second World War. And there's this astonishing picture of Churchill, Roosevelt and Stalin at Yalta in 1945, writing just quite neatly where much of the century's world order was decided. And it is astonishing to see the UK, the US and Russia, the Soviet Union, all sitting together as peaceful bedfellows at that point.
Yes, it looks like that. But I think what's interesting that now there seems to be a lot more scrutiny about the deal that was done between these three then superpowers. One of the points exactly that Tim Bouverie makes is that obviously the Americans were hugely useful to the British, to the Allies, but they didn't do it necessarily out of the goodness of their hearts. They extracted a price. 50 antiquated destroyers, we're told, cost... For that, the Americans charged a 99-year lease for air and naval bases on British possessions in the Caribbean and North Atlantic. In 1941, a US cruise arrived off the coast of South Africa to carry away £42 million worth of Britain's last remaining gold reserves. So there was a hefty price was exacted, which, if you put it, as you were saying, Philippe, in Donald Trump's idea of everything being purely transactional, yes, we will come and help you, but we're going to charge you for it because we can't see beyond, the bottom line of the bill sort of thing. And I think the other thing that, as I say, historians seem to be focusing more now is how Stalin and Roosevelt actually cut Churchill out of the process, that between them they carved things up, the terrible things, handing over Poland to the Soviet Union, for instance. And so this idea of these two ruthless superpowers really ignoring the rule of law in many ways and just doing what suits them, again, to me, and obviously more importantly to Tim Bouverie, the historian, really has a resonance with today's situation.
It's an interesting article insofar as it talks about the West that is fractured, the West that fractured post Second World War, and the fact that Putin is gaining by this incredible inversion of the US foreign policy, which that idea that the only thing worse than fighting with allies is fighting without them. And what we've seen in the last 48 hours is that sense that the allies may have to fight without Trump's America.
Most certainly. That's why the big issue concerning Europe is its own defense and how to organize it. A question of rearmament as well, because Europe has been relying far too much on US power for since the end of the Second World War. So I think in a sense it's a blessing in disguise, because they will have to react to that new situation. We don't know yet how long this new course will last. Trump is only elected for 4 years, and he's supposed to leave office after that. Let's hope so. So who knows if, say, a Democratic candidate is elected president? I think that he or she might reverse to the old order and the older alliances. But in the meantime, yes, Europe has to do something. And when I say Europe, I don't say the EU, Europe, and that includes the UK, which is no longer part of the EU. And because there's a war going on in Europe to start with, in Ukraine. So, yeah. There
is a war of words and perception as well, which is emerging in terms of who gets to be invited to see the king first. It has emerged that the French President Emmanuel Macron will make a state visit to the United Kingdom months before Trump. And this is emerging in the Sunday Times. It talks about the French president will see his friend King Charles in May, prompting questions about Britain's trade priorities. I'll come to that perennial delightful string that we have spotted, Simon, which is the Times doesn't like France and quite likes, well, whether it does or doesn't, it quite likes picking a fight.
It likes teasing France.
Yes, it does like have a little bit of a poke. The interesting thing that we feel here is that obviously this will bruise an American ego. The way that the Sunday Times is framing it is that it's part of an attempt to negotiate closer trade ties with Europe. Two very different ideas, which I had not thought could be brought together, that this is a good thing in order to sort of, snub Trump ever so slightly, but a bad thing because it means that we get closer to France again. Philippe, what's your take on the fact that Macron is racing to the finish line for tea with King Charles?
It's always a good invitation for a French president to have a state visit in the UK. I think they all enjoy it. It's good for their profile, and Macron needs that because it's a bit of a lame duck in domestic politics now. So, yes, it's a bit of a snub to Trump to start with. King Charles was invited to France on a state visit recently. So I understand the two men, Macron and King Charles, get along well. And the other point that you raised, which is also very important, is about politics. Notably, will the UK under a Starmer Labour government get closer to the EU again, particularly sort of closer commercial ties, which both the UK and the EU need, in fact. Macron has been a bit lukewarm with regard to that. So that's a bit the harder partner to convince. Macron was very much opposed to the UK leaving the EU. But once the decision was made by the British people, I think he seemed to have kind of lost interest in the UK. So probably it's all part of a sort of a charm offensive on the part of the British to sort of get closer to the EU again via Macron, because he needs to be convinced.
And the UK-EU summit is being held in May, isn't it, Simon, where both the EU and the United Kingdom are expected to move closer. One speaks very gently, very delicately when they say moves closer. Simon's just pulled a face. But it is a difficult thing, isn't it, that although I don't think anybody would agree that keeping Donald Trump at arm's length is probably not a bad idea at the moment. But the idea that this could actually be so politically linked that it could be seen as a sort of a concession to Europe, rather than just inviting President Macron over is so complicated and would arguably is it unnecessary?
I think it just demonstrates how so many European states are trying to walk this tightrope, aren't they, between keeping Trump on side, but then also making it clear that they are still very much part of Europe, part of the EU if they're members, and trying to leverage what the EU offers as a huge trading bloc and defence entity, if you like. So I think that's presumably what the British government is trying to do here. I think what's interesting, because obviously there's a lot of discussion in UK politics about the potential success of reform in the local government elections that we've got coming up in the next few weeks. So reform very much the Brexit, the child of the Brexit party. So no British politicians are going to want to be seen to be too pro-EU, are they? Because it might drive voters to reform. On the other hand, I think what's interesting, what we've seen over really, it started with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it's been jump started by Donald Trump's attitude to Europe, is this idea that perhaps Britain has a part to play with the EU, not necessarily economically, but certainly, well, hopefully economically, many people would say, but certainly in terms of defence.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid, because time has run out on today's episode of Monocle on Sunday. The warmest of thanks to my guests, Simon Brooke and Philippe Marlière, and joining us on the line, Fiona Wilson and Tyler Brûlé. Thanks to our producer, Desi Bandley and Mariella Bevan, and our studio engineer is Mariella as well. I'm Emma Nelson. Monocle on Sunday's back next week, but until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend and a very happy Easter to you.